misfortune came. His stepmother, because the king had more than one queen, and the queen that was not his mother requested a boon or benediction from the king. And the benediction was two: Ram should not become king, my son should become king. And second is Ram should go to the forest for 14 years, banished. That criminal would be banished. He didn't do any crime, but just banished him. The reason, the rationale was, in that 14 years that my son is the king, he'll establish sovereignty and royalty, and the roots will be well established. And when Ram comes back, he's still the king and won't have a problem. 14 years banished. So that was really sad. And it's one of the themes of Ramayana. We discussed this earlier. It has to do with, the sadness has to do with stimulating love. In separation, there's this saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. You've heard that. So the absence of Ram, and just even the idea that Ram would have to not be king and be banished to the forest, horrible. And it struck the hearts of different people in different ways, based upon their love and their relationship. So it stimulated the love in different ways. And he went to the forest. He was determined, because his father gave a promise: I'm going to hold the word of my father, because that's how I live my life. I stand by truth, and my father spoke the truth. It's all to sacrifice everything for the word of my father. So I'll be went to the forest. And then there's a whole bunch of things that happen when he's in the forest, some good things and bad things. And one of the terrible, terrible things is his wife, or queen, named Sita. She was kidnapped by a bad guy. A Rakshasa means someone who eats people, like a cannibal. That's who kidnapped her. And then there's this whole thing of trying to, where is she, fighting, and then a big battle to defeat the people, the bad guy and his whole army. Ram won and Sita is brought back. And so there's many in that complicated story, many lessons. And one of the key persons in the story is the monkey. I've not seen the Star Wars, but maybe you have. Okay. The script writer for Star Wars was inspired by Ramayana. There's a monkey, there's a lady who was put into difficulty, and there are two other people. So there's a cast of, the central characters are four. So in Ramayana, the central characters are four. There's Ram and his beloved brother, Lakshman is his name, the two brothers, the wife, and Hanuman. And it's all about, living a life of virtue, finding Sita, bringing Sita back to safety. And Ram returns and he becomes the king, everything's nice. It's not over, there's some more things that happen after that. That's the main storyline. And within it is virtue, how to live one's life by virtue, and how to have your love churned and stimulated by feelings that look like unpleasant feelings. We discussed this yesterday. It's actually, according to the teachings, it's a type of love, it's an ecstasy of love, where one is feeling separation and then again meeting. And then the joy is increased when there's meeting because of the separation. It's a theme of love, it's the science of love of God, where there's seeming difficulty, the person put in seeming difficulty doesn't budge from virtue, but there's sorrow involved in the difficulty, and then overcome the difficulty and then be with God. That's the theme of Ramayana. So we, as you see on the screen, this is Hanuman part 2. The part 1 that we discussed yesterday evening was his birth in this world. And it's a little interesting, more than a little interesting. When it was understood that God or Vishnu would appear with 3 brothers, the rulers of the universe got together and said, we got to do something with this bad guy, this man-eater terrorist. He has a name. We're going to hear about him tonight. His name is Ravana. Ravana is one who makes people roar. Ravana. So, do something about Ravana. And Vishnu, the name of God, says, I will appear very soon in my 4 expansions as brothers. You should appear on earth and assist me. So they're to assist in a very interesting way. Rather than retelling the whole story, their partial expansions appear as children in non-human species, specifically as in a monkey-looking species, but they're not just monkeys, they're very powerful warriors to assist Ram in stopping this terrorist. So we heard about his appearance, and that's where we're continuing. The next time we hear about him is when Hanuman and Ram first meet. They're in the forest searching for Sita because she's been kidnapped. And that's where we are. But yesterday, this is beginning with 2 corrections. Today's class is beginning with 2 corrections from yesterday. One of those corrections from yesterday is, did it change? One of these histories are called Puranas history. I made a mistake in the typing. I meant to put the 28th, I put 27th. So there's going to be some details that you two will not be able to follow, and it'll take too long to go through all the details. So it's the 20, we're presently in the 28th cycle of the yugas, 4 yugas. The mistake was yesterday, it's the 27th. And Sneh Lollipop, mistake. Yes, very nice, but it was, that was corrected. So Valmiki, who's the author of the Vedas, is said in Vaya Purana that he was the compiler of the Vedas, or Vedas, in the 24th Yuga cycle, presently in the 28th Yuga cycle. And there's another description in Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Some of you know what that book is. It's written by Rupa Goswami, and the whole book, it's a really big book, like, 700 pages or something. It's just describing avatars. Avatars, like that's a movie, but it's a Sanskrit word that means one who descends. That's the meaning of the word. So the avatars of Krishna are in detail described in Bhagavatamrita. And in that text, it discusses Rama. And here's the text from Bhagavatamrita. Splendid as a new blade of Durga grass, because Rama's complexion was greenish, and accompanied by Sumitra's two sons, one of the queens of the king, and Bharata, another son of the king. Ram appeared in the Treta Yuga of the 24th Chatur Yuga as the son of Kaushali and Dasrath. Kaushali and Dasrath were his mother and father. Dasrath was the king, Ram was his son. And there were 3 other brothers. So that the specific reference is noted on the screen. And it's different than how I always thought. I shared this yesterday. This is a correction slide. It's not that Ram appeared in the Treta Yuga of this same Yuga cycle. It was the 24th Yuga cycle. This is the 28th Yuga cycle. It's a detail. And another correction was, I didn't indicate properly. It's Surya who was the teacher of Hanuman. And there's an image of the sun god, Surya, that nice mention of Kilaka on the sun. The details are not described in Valmiki Ramayana. The only thing that is mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana is this. In the final sarga, the final section of Ramayana, there it gives a specific verse. You can look it up later if you like. Long ago, this foremost of monkeys, that's Hanuman, immeasurable and eager to learn grammar, faced the sun and, following it, walked from the eastern to the western mountain, it doesn't say which, and so mastered that great subject. The only other reference that I'm aware of in Valmiki Ramayana is, as we mentioned last night, when Hanuman is readying himself to make a grand leap across the ocean all the way to the island of Ceylon or Lanka, he faces the east because the sun is just rising, and he offers his respects to his teacher, sun god. So the details are not there, but in some manner or fashion, Hanuman received knowledge of grammar and the Vedas from the sun god. So that's a correction from yesterday. And now we're beginning. This is the continuation of that part 1. Ram and Lakshman reach Rishamukh mountain, directed by Kabandha. Now, in the painting, you see some monkeys up there in the upper right. That's Rishamukh mountain. And down below in the center, that's Ram and Lakshman. They're wearing the clothing of ascetics living in the forest, but at the same time they're carrying bows and arrows and swords and weapons of a Kshatriya, a soldier. And the background is, as they were passing through the forest, searching for Sita, much to their surprise, this horrible monster came out of the forest and was ready to eat them with big arms and so forth and so on. And there was a big battle, and Ram won the battle. And before he left his body, the creature told his story, how he got this misshapen body. And he was asked by Ram and Lakshman, do you know where we can find Sita? And he said, let my body be finished, and as my original celestial body ascends, then my consciousness will be able to tell you, because right now I'm in this terrible body, covered consciousness, terrible body, so I can't tell you. And the celestial form arose, and the celestial form said, you can find where is Sita, and best recover her by making a friendship with one who has had the same misfortune come to him. You know, misery loves company. So misfortune came to Sugriva. And if you go to Rishimukh mountain, you'll find him. And you go that way to the Rishimukh mountain. So they went. And the painting shows they arrived. Because the reason for this particular juncture is Hanuman's going to show up. They haven't met Hanuman yet. This question came yesterday evening. A or B? A. Hanuman knew Ram is the personality of God because they have an eternal relationship. And he was just waiting for him to come and they got together. Or B. In the past time, Hanuman didn't know, but as soon as he saw Ram, then he knew. That you're my Lord and Master. So it's B. So here's that same painting, but a larger version of it, where there's the two. Up on top of the mountain is Sugriva. Now, who is Sugriva? Sugriva is one like Ram who had his wife taken. And he was grieving the loss of his wife, and not only the loss of his wife, but the loss of his kingdom, because his elder brother took his wife and took the kingdom. And they had a big, dispute between each other. And so Sugriva, was living up on a mountaintop. There's a long story which we'll hear when we get in this personalities of the mind, we get to Bali and Sugriva. Those are the two brothers. We'll hear the details. It's not, I'm not going to do it 6 times, so it'll come later. But there was a dispute, and there's Sugriva, fearful of his brother Bali. And when he saw these two looking like ascetics with carrying weapons, he thought maybe this is a trick from my brother. And he sent his minister, who was Hanuman, to go check it out. Are they friend or foe? Basically. Who are these two? So Hanuman had the capacity to change shapes, because that was one of the benedictions of these descendants of the demigods, is they could assume any form. They had many powers, mystical powers, like the demigods had. So he could assume a form of a Brahmin. So he came down the mountain and came before Ram and Lakshman. They're the two personalities on the left. The younger brother, his stature is much shorter, but we'll hear as we go forward. They were only a day apart in their birth. Anyway, younger brother, Lakshman, and Ram. And as soon as he comes before them, he immediately feels this affection and affinity for them. Now, stepping back from the story, there are commentators on this epic. And one of the main messages of the commentators is the role that Hanuman plays as being like a guru. Now, he's not the guru for Ram, but in this case, he's a guru for one who has forgotten with the personality. That's Sugriva. So he's playing the role of a mediator. Like, Sugriva, he's the minister of the one who lost his kingdom. So he looks up to Sugriva in his relationship with Sugriva. And he's helping Sugriva as a mediator between his king and the personality of Godhead, connecting his superior to the personality of Godhead. The function is a guru function, or one can say mediator. When they first see Hanuman instantly offers his respect, he can no longer hold this disguised form, and he shows his monkey form. And when they see this monkey form, they think, uh-oh, this is a trick. This is some Rakshasa trick. And so they get their weapons ready just in case it's a trick. But Hanuman sees his beloved Lord, and he can't continue hiding himself as a monkey or Vanara. Instead, he shows himself as a Vanara. And he asks in this conversation, he offers his humble obeisances, and then immediately discloses. There's a long section. He does all. They haven't said anything yet. Hanuman is the one to speak, and he asks them, "What are you doing in the forest? Who are you? And why are you sobbing and sighing with such a heavy heart? What's the difficulty?" He asks questions, and then he discloses who he is, even before they answer who they are. And he says, "I'm Minister Sugriva, and he sent me here to see if a friendship can be made between you and him." And he speaks in Sanskrit. I don't know the monkeys that can speak in Sanskrit. I don't know. And Ram is listening very carefully. And this is part of a whole series of events, like 10 events. Now, from commentators, Ram wants to find a guru to recover Sita. Now, Sita, from a transcendental picture, Sita is the internal potency, like the sunshine is to the sun. The sunshine is inseparable from the sun, and they can't be separated. But Sita has been separated from Ram. So this, for your pleasure, the Acharyas described like this. Sita is, in the pastime of Ramayana, performing a function of a living entity that turns their attention away from God. Now, Sita can't do that, but Sita does that, or apparently does that. In the one and only time that she ever desired anything apart from what Ram wanted. Because devotion means, love means, what's the happiness of the beloved? Pure love is like that. What's the happiness of the beloved? Love of God is, what's the happiness of God? But Sita does something very uncharacteristic of her. She desires something that has nothing to do with Ram's happiness. That's what conditioned souls do, right? We desire something out there for our happiness. And the something out there, in Sita's case, was the golden deer. It's part of the layers of messages within this whole Ramayana. But she plays the part of a living entity that wants to enjoy separately. Oh, look at that golden deer, wouldn't it be very nice? You know how much I love when we return in 1 year's time, we'll be back in Ayodhya, and we'll go to the palace gardens. And oh, wouldn't it be nice to have this nice pet deer, see all the colors, and look at the colors are changing, and oh, Ram, can you get the deer? And then Lakshman says, that's not a deer. That's Marisha. It's a trick. Don't go for it, Ram. Don't go for it, Ram. Sita, please don't ask for this. And she just ignores Lakshman and says, even if you can't capture the deer, you can kill the deer, and then we can skin the deer, and then we can sit on the deer skin when we're back in Ayodhya. And that's not Sita wanting to sit on the, she's speaking as if she was a conditioned soul, desiring enjoyment separate from Ram. I mean, he's in the picture, but it's about her enjoyment. And that's the cause of the problem. For any living entity, it's the cause of the problem for Sita. And Sita gets kidnapped. And now back to this picture. Ram wants a guru to bring Sita back, the living entity, the wayward soul, to restore them to the right consciousness and the right position. That's how the commentators describe this whole part, one of the layers of the drama, the lessons in Ramayana. So Ram is examining Hanuman. Maybe he can be that person. So Ram, after hearing Hanuman's eloquent speech, Ram doesn't even look at Hanuman, he looks at his brother, Lakshman, and is describing what he sees. His demeanor, his impeccable speech, his nice qualities, his composure. He has very refined characteristics. He has mastery in all the Vedas. He did not use even a single unchaste expression, meaning he was speaking impeccable Sanskrit. He spoke in chaste Sanskrit. He spoke in a middle tone. His speech was rich in erudition. He delivered without any haste. He's observing the traits of Hanuman. He could please the mind of even an enemy with weapons in his hand. He's good. He'd make a good group. Let's continue to examine him. And after he speaks to Lakshman, Lakshman then turns to Hanuman and says, here's our story. Our story is Sita was kidnapped, and we heard from, we should look for Sugriva from Kavanga. So we've come looking for Sugriva. Do you know where Sugriva? I mean, he's the minister of Sugriva. So then Hanuman immediately narrates the whole sad story of Sugriva, how he was banished from the kingdom by his brother Bali, and instead has taken residence in the forest for fear of Bali. Now there's details which we hear coming up, why that particular place, etc. So this is the initial exchange. It's the first time. It's really sweet, I feel, anyway, that these are eternal associates and they're meeting for the first time in the past time. And it's really, really lovely. There's many nice paintings. Do I need to do this or you do it? Here's some nice paintings of Hanuman meeting. Then comes the next action. Hanuman offers, I'll take you. You're looking for Sugriva, Sugriva's looking for some help. I'll take you to Sugriva so that you can then form bond of friendship. This is Hanuman bringing the wayward, lost, forlorn, distressed, sad, hurt Sugriva in contact with the Supreme Lord. That's the function. So they agree, and off he goes. He makes his body really big, and enlarging his body, he assumes a gigantic form because that's one of his mystic powers, and he carries them on his shoulders up the mountainside, because monkeys can take big leaps much easier than humans can. There's a nice discussion in this section about the rasa. Now for our newer people, that's a new word. Rasa means the taste in a relationship with God. And there's 5 primary, and Hanuman represents one of them. And it's the rasa, or the mood of love of a servant. He's like the pinnacle perfection of the mode of service. He just loves service. And if there's nothing happening, he's just got his hands folded, waiting for the word. Some service, there he goes. That's his happiness, is being in service to Ram. So this is his first service, carrying Ram in his gigantic form up the side of the mountain to go meet Sugriva. There's some nice depictions of this. They look very happy. He looks very happy. And here it shows him flying. He can fly too, but he knows leaping up the side of the mountain. And finally, they make it to where Sugriva is. Now, some of these paintings show Ram with a mustache. Look at the mustache. Mustache is sideburns. Look at that. Fashionable. And he had a mustache is sideburns. But he had matted locks on top of his thing. This was right. So the Hanuman is making the introduction. Here's that same image in the larger picture. In the lower left is their initial introduction that's being made. These old style paintings have, several events happening in one painting. Now that what they're sitting on is the mountain, and in the lower right of this painting is they have a fire, and they're taking vows before a fire, a vow of friendship. That comes later. But in this painting, it shows with the crown. That's Sugriva falling at Ram's feet, or maybe it's Hanuman falling at Ram's feet, and Sugriva is standing. So again, our Acharya is described. Hanuman plays the role of an Acharya. An Acharya, for those of you that are new here, you're getting a Sanskrit vocabulary tutorial. Acharya means when he teaches by example. Achar means conduct. And acharya is when he teaches by the conduct. He teaches by example. So he's playing the role of an acharya. And there's on one side Sugriva, and on the other side is Hanuman. And he's helping to make an arrangement as a guru or an acharya for friendship between the two. No, you see them shaking hands. That's friendship. So on the left side, that's the Vanaras, that's Sugriva, wearing the crown over there. And on the right side is Ram and Lakshman, and kneeling is Sugriva. It is Hanuman with a big club. And this painting shows their hand is above the fire, and they're taking a pledge, because it wasn't just, there's a formality involved in Vedic culture, often. And for those of you who are new, this is like very interesting. Right behind Sugriva is a bear in the darker color on the right side. That's Jambavan. We'll hear some more about Jambavan as we go along. This is Jambavan. This is Sugriva. This is Hanuman. This is Ram. This is Lakshman. Here's some other ministers watching all this happening. And there's the fire. They're taking vows of friendship. Now down here, you'll see some jewelry. The story behind the jewelry is coming up shortly. When Sita was being kidnapped, there's the bad guy, Ravana, who had 10 heads, and his chariot was broken by Jatayu, but he killed Jatayu with a spear, cut off his arms. And there's, in the same painting, there's Ravana soaring through the air, carrying Sita away, and Sita drops some jewelry in a cloth on top of Rishimukh mountain. Now they're very far distance away, but that's shown in one painting. And this is another painting of the same thing. There's Ravan carrying Sita, and Sita drops some jewels. So just in case the Vanaras down here have a chance to inform Ram where she went that way. And there's the jewels to verify to them. Here's another painting showing the same thing. Sita throwing over to the side some jewelry in a cloth. And it falls on top of the mountain where Sugriva is. So when Ram tells his story, Sugriva here says, we kept those jewels in a cloth in a special place in one of the caves. Please go get them. Someone gets them. And then there's the cloth. And now Ram is going to look at the jewels. There's the jewels. And he recognized them. This is Sita's. I recognize them. And he's feeling very sad when he sees these jewels because he's remembering Sita. So these feelings of sorrow are surging in him. And this one here is wearing the crown. That's Sugriva. And this is Ram with a nice beard. This is a brother Rakshan with a nice beard. And over here is Hanuman. We're okay? I'll just keep going. So now they've met. Sugriva, who lost his wife and kingdom, Ram, who lost his wife and kingdom. They made friendship. And Ram volunteers, I'll go first. I'll help you get your kingdom and your wife back. And now this is about Hanuman, so there's much more to tell later, and we'll tell them much more with the story of these two brothers, Vali and Sugriva. But Vali says, or Sugriva says, Vali's really strong. Vali's really strong. And I don't have full confidence that you can defeat him. Can you show me your strength? Ram laughs. He said, Sugriva was capable with one arrow to fire an arrow through this really thick sal tree. And over there, there's 7 of them. Can you fire an arrow through one of those trees? So Ram not just fires one arrow through one of the trees, he fires 7 arrows, one arrow through 7 trees, and then that arrow goes down all the way to the bottom of the universe, pays respects to Kapila Dev, comes back up and lands in his quiver. Wow, that was good. And another story, we'll hear another personalities from Ramayana, the Vali and Sugriva story. There was a giant creature shaped like a giant bull named Dundubi, and he attacked Vali. Vali picked him up and threw him 8 miles in the air. So there's his bones. See the bones over there? Can you lift those bones? And Ram with his toe flicked the bones, flying through the air many miles. So now this is about Hanuman. Hanuman's participating in all of this discussion. And so Ram suggests, if you go and invite Vali to come out for combat with you, then with my arrow, I can pierce the body of Bali. Now here's a detail. There's many details. And when we get to Bali, there are many more details. But one of those details is Bali was the son of Indra. And Indra gave Bali a special charming necklace that had the power that whoever you're in combat with, there's your power, but half of their power will come to you and you'll win, no matter what. Because whatever their power is, half of it goes to Bali, and then there's his power, so he's going to win. So because Indra gave that pledge or benediction, Ram didn't want to violate. He could have, because he's all powerful. But he didn't want to violate it, so he did what he did. He hid behind the tree. So there wouldn't be any direct combat, because that would be in violation of Indra's pledge. One of the reasons why he did it, we'll cover that when we get to it. There's a whole discussion with Bali about Ram doing what he did. But here we find Ram's hiding behind trees. In the bottom left, you see Lakshman and Hanuman also behind trees. And you see the battle between Bali and Sugriva. And it's a really intense battle. Looks kind of even to begin with because they're both very powerful. But after some time, Bali is stronger. Then half of Sugriva's strength goes to Bali. There you see on the left side, there's Ram ready with his bow, but he doesn't fire the arrow. And there's another one, and Sugriva is getting whooped, and Ram doesn't fire an arrow. And finally, you see the bottom left again, Ram's hiding behind a tree, behind him is Hanuman, behind him is Lakshman, and Sugriva is nearly finished. He gets up and runs for his life, and his brother stops only when he gets to this place that was cursed by a sage. If Bali ever enters, he'll immediately die. So, breathless, Sugriva says, "You weren't planning to kill him. Then why did you send me to go fight him to begin with?" And Ram says, "Well, I couldn't tell the difference between the two of you." Now, who do I send? Snehabali? Can I send you a document? An 8-page, 6-page, whatever it is, document that answers the question, did Ram lie? But he said, I couldn't tell the difference between the two of you. Because he's omniscient, how could he not? Now they look alike, but there's a whole long explanation of why he said what he said and it was lying. So it's the next question to ask. Because God doesn't lie, Ram doesn't lie. He stands by the truth. So why did he say what he said? Was it or was it not a lie? So I'll send you the document, you can circulate it to others. So Ram decides that so that we can distinguish between the two of you, Lakshman, gather a nice vine and put it around Sugriva's neck so that I can see who's who. Now my little college brain goes like this. Wait a minute. If there's two powerful warriors fighting against one another, a little skinny vine is going to fall off. So how's that going to work? But the reason, we'll hear some more later, the reason is Ram is very discreet about how he helps other people understand proper conduct. And there was a misconduct on Sugriva's part that was unnoticed by Sugriva, but Hanuman noticed. The misconduct was when they got together up on top of this Rishabh mountain, and Sugriva had made this friendship with Ram, he made a little sitting place, with some leaves from a tree. There was a sitting place for Ram, and he made a sitting place for himself. But he neglected Lakshman. You don't neglect Lakshman. That's his brother and his expansion. So Hanuman caught it. Hanuman made a sitting place for Lakshman. So what Ram wanted was, when Lakshman was giving the vine or the garland to Sugriva, he had to bow down to receive it. Okay, this irregularity is not corrected. Unknowingly, but corrected. It's subtle. There's poetry and there's beauty and there's little refinements within the mind that without the commentators disclosing things, it was just missing. Anyway, so he gave him, Sugriva was being encouraged by Ram, go back again. Now you've got this nice vine around your neck. And he went back, and sure enough, there was a big battle. And as you see in this painting, Bali is the one with the arrow in his chest. And similar, there's another painting. Hanuman is in the lower right corner. You have this on your screen. I will. You have this on your screen. Okay. There's Ram firing his arrow. Sugriva gets it. Sugriva is in the midst of the fight. Bali gets the arrow in his chest. And then the next slide, there's Sugriva with this nice garland around his neck and over his shoulders. Bali turns to see who has done this, and he speaks because he knows Ram has a reputation of being a noble person, and he says all these heavy things to Ram. What kind of noble person are you? You did this, you did that, and so forth and so on. And we're going to hear about that detailed exchange because this is about Hanuman, not about Bali and Sugriva. Sugriva is crowned as king after Bali passes, and Sugriva makes a promise. You have helped me regain my life and my kingdom. I now pledge in our friendship that I will help you regain your life and kingdom, or at least life. And but it's now the rainy season, so with your permission, we'll wait till after the 4 months of the rainy season, and then we'll go. Now that what's in the background is the kingdom that he had lost. So Ram agrees naturally, and Sugriva becomes the king, but he becomes a little self-indulgent in the pleasures of palace life and association with ladies and so forth and so on and so on and so on, and he becomes a little intoxicated in his newly regained wealth and opulence. And the 4 months of the rainy season pass, and Ram speaks to Lakshman. They're in a special little cave over there, in the center of the painting, and he expresses his frustration. Sugriva is not a man of his word. And if a man's not a man of his word, then he's, what kind of a man is he? He is neglected. That the rainy season is over. So don't go in anger, but go and remind him nicely. That's what's happening on the right side of the verse. Lakshman, to remind Sugriva, you forgot. Please do what you promised was. So in this next painting, it shows there's Hanuman having a conversation with Sugriva in the capital, Kishkinda, and Hanuman and Lakshmana is coming to the door. So Hanuman is advising Sugriva. Ingratitude is very bad. And you made a pledge, and you're at the receiving end of such good fortune, you have everything. But you've become indulgent in enjoying those everythings. So here's his advice again, the role of a spiritual master for the person who is his superior. Hanuman's a minister, but he's acting like guru with Sugriva. By reminding the conditioned soul, Sugriva, that one should forget one's service to the Lord when there's a little opulence. All these opulences are nothing but the mercy of the Lord. See, he counsels him, and then there's a knock on the door. Lakshman. And Lakshman's. Ram said, don't be angry, but Lakshman's angry. Especially when he sees, look at the indulgence of this king. So, in the left side, that's Sugriva with queens and, palatial life. On the right side, that's Lakshman asking for audience with the king. And one of the persons who greets him is the son, Angada, is the son of Ali. And he goes back and says, uh-oh, Lakshman's very angry. And so Sugriva sent Tara. Look at her very nice sari. Very maybe like she's really excellent speech. She's really excellent speech. And so she speaks in such a way that Lakshmana becomes pacified. And standing behind her, that's Sugriva saying, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And after Lakshman speaks very strongly, we hear going forward. The words that he says, it's an important, there's layers and layers and layers of lessons. I really like this particular section. I'll say it in some way, we'll go to the details later. Lakshman makes reference to Lord Brahma. When Lord Brahma saw an ungrateful person, Lord Brahma said that there's a way to counteract the offense of breaking a vow, killing a brahmana, and bad things. There are ways of atoning for those bad things, but there's no atonement for ingratitude. It's an important lesson. And so there's a whole topic we'll get to. What's the nature of gratitude? Where does it arise from? Where does it take you to? And without it, you're bereft of life. So he's heavy. And Hanuman, then, interestingly, he advises Sugriva. Although Hanuman has spoken very heavily, he's come just to remind you of your duty. And he's angry because Ram is angry, but Ram is angry because of his feelings of separation from Sita. And just tolerate it. It's another lesson. There's so many lessons in Ramayana. When somebody speaks something really strongly, it may be that they're having some hurt feelings not connected to you, but they're just dealing with something that's making them feel really intense and emotional. And recognizing that their emotion is because of some situation they're passing through, just be very patient and tolerant and peaceful. don't like, hey, why are you talking like that to me? You know, don't do that. Hanuman is advising Sugriva, don't do like that. Just recognize Rama is feeling lots of pain and separation from Sita. So just tolerate this intensity directed towards you. And after all, you're behind schedule. So when Lakshman finds out that Hanuman has already sent for millions of Vanaras to come, then they all gather and they're sent in different directions to go find Sita. Now it's done together. They go to see to where Ram is. Hanuman accompanies them because this section is about Hanuman. And Ram is immediately, you acted as a friend. But whatever that feeling was that Ram was feeling, and whatever Ram was feeling, that Lakshman was feeling, was gone. Just like poof. Which is a symptom of a great person. So Sugriva has this fantastic minister that's actually served as his guru. And he speaks openly about his confidence in Hanuman. And Ram is hearing, because this is part of this preparing Hanuman to become guru. Here's what Sugriva says: being endowed with strength, intelligence, prowess, good judgment, and knowledge of time and place, you should ponder the ways to find Sita. I have all confidence that you will be the one successful in finding her. So Ram hears this, and he's been evaluating. He's now going to make a decision, and he's going to empower Hanuman to be his representative to restore Sita, to find Sita. Now the instructions to Hanuman is very simple, two things. Find Sita, report back. He didn't say bring back, find Sita, and report back. She's safe, you know where she is, we'll make our plan from there. So Ram decides this very significant gesture where Ram decides to give Hanuman his personal ring. The reason for giving the personal ring, at least externally, is when you find Sita, because I have confidence, as Sugriva has confidence, you're going to be the one to find Sita. She's not going to know if you're to be trusted or not. Show her this ring, and she'll know you're my agent. You're representing me. But it's the deeper understanding given by the commentators is he's entrusting this acharya or guru function to Hanuman. But because it's such an important gesture, there's many paintings that are showing Ram giving this ring to Hanuman. He has all trust and confidence, and that is the right person because he's examined him. And Hanuman's ready to go and do the bidding as the guru on behalf of Lord Ramachandra. And we're almost done, but we're not quite done yet. The Vanaras are divided into 4 groups. There's a really interesting section where Sugriva informs the groups where they should go, going east, south, north, and west. And the details are astounding. So Ram asks, how do you know all these details? He said, I went to all these places. When Bali was chasing me, I went to all these places, trying to get away from him. And I have a very clear memory of what the traces are, so that's how I know. And if you read the list carefully, you'll find it's the same description as in Srimad Bhagavatam about the structure of the universe. For those of you that like to read Prabhupada's books, you'll know that the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, starting with chapter 16, going through 26, is a whole description of Vedic cosmology, really fascinating section. And there are places we'll never see, but they exist. They exist even on this Bhumandala plane, but there's lots and lots of places where they went, where Sugriva and Bali went. You'll never see them, but they're there. I find it interesting. It's there in Ramayana and detailed in Srimad Bhagavatam. So off they go in 4 different directions. And in the southerly direction, because they already know that Ravana headed in the southerly direction, they saw him from the top of Rishamukh mountain. But here's the detail, many details. The Rakshasas have mystic powers, so he could have headed in the southern direction but gone anywhere. In the structure of the universe, where this earthly realm is in the middle planetary region, and just above the earthly realm is a plane where Rakshasas principally reside, and above that is the heavenly region. We could have gone to that Bhuvar Loka region. We could have gone down into the nether region. He could have gone anywhere. Although he was heading in the southerly direction, from that place he could have gone anywhere. So Ram wants to know, where is she? Because he's going to do that part 2 when he knows where she is. So off they go, and they're traveling in the southern direction. Sugriva tells everybody, come back in 30 days with your report. If you don't come back in 30 days, you stand to be executed. So 30 days had passed, and Angada is with that party with Hanuman. They haven't found Sita, and he decided he's going to fast until death because he doesn't trust Sugriva and so forth and so on. So they're at the shore of the ocean, and some of the Vanaras decide to do with Angada's fast until death. So very near to that place was Sampati. So there's a picture of a vulture, because he was one of 2 brothers. And Sampati, there's a long story, there's a whole section on Sampati and Jatayu. We'll get there. But he had no wings. He was very, 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 very old, and his wings had been scorched by the sun. So he was always very hungry. And he was thinking, wow, this is great. Lunch. The Vadas are going to fast till death, because he could hear them. And I had a big meal. Because I can't fly around and get my meal, so they're coming to me. It's really nice arrangement. But as they're going forward, the Vanaras are speaking. Angada says, oh, if only I was so fortunate as Jatayu, because Jatayu was able to give it life in service to Ram. And so Sampati and Jatayu are brothers. And this painting is showing this part right here. He's in a cave in a mountain near the ocean. And here's the Vanaras near the ocean. So Sampati asks, can you bring me to where you are? So they bring him from the cave and bring him to where they are. And they have this nice discussion about what do you know about Jatayu? I heard my brother's name mentioned. Can you tell me something about Jatayu? I haven't seen him in a long, long time. And they describe what happened to Jatayu, and the reason for their coming to this place is to find Sita. And then they ask Sampati, can you help us? Do you know where Sita is? Did you see her? And he said, well, I didn't see her passing overhead, but with my, vultures are known to have really good eyesight. So with my eyesight is good, my wings aren't. So with my eyesight, I can see her. And he described what he sees, even from such a long distance. And she's in a grove of trees, in a garden area in Lanka. And then somebody says, when long story, but a short version of a long story, because we'll do the Sambhati story later. When I fell to earth, I was in great distress because I lost my wings. And I was about to give up my life. And one sage said, why are you doing this? And I told him why. And he said, the day will come when you regain your wings. And you regain your wings when you do some service for Ram. That's what the sage told me. And now you come. And so I have some opportunity to render some service to Ram. And as standing before that, his wings started to sprout. And as his wings started to sprout, he flew off in the air. He had flown in the air for a long time because he had no wings. But he's now confirmed that's where Sita is. She's in this very far away island in the ocean named Lanka. And he gave the distance. It's a big distance. So they're asking one another who can jump the distance to Lanka and find her, because that's the mandate. Find Sita and report that. So none of the runners can make that jump. And then Jambavan reminds Hanuman of his power. Hanuman, you'd be silent here. But I know you have the power to do this. So going back to yesterday evening, the part that this is the continuation of part one. Yesterday evening, we heard that was the Brahmanas uttered something, a sacred curse, that Hanuman would forget his powers because he's a mischievous little boy. He'll forget his powers until someone reminds him. And Jambavan knows his powers. So Jambavan mentions his powers and even described when you were small, you could make yourself so big, you could pick up elephants and play with them, toss them around. So Hanuman, you can do it. You're the one that can go over to Lanka and find Sita. So his body gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It is by the side of the ocean, as you can see. And he's all ready now. That ends this whole, it's called Kishkinda Kanda, the fourth section of Ramayana. And when we begin talking about Hanuman again, it begins another kanda, another canto, or another section. Ramayana, that's his long leap to get to the other side. Hanuman, yeah. So the back to this whole time spent for 2 weeks, because it's going to take 2 weeks, because it's a big epic, not just describing the personalities of Ramayana. And a little background. In the month of Kartik, for those of you that are new, Kartik is a special month in India. During rainy season, it's the last of the rainy season, and it's nice to go to holy places. Something I've been doing for over 30 years, 35 years, something like that, is during Kartik month taking groups of devotees to holy places. So there was this kind of like, hey, let's go to the places of Ram's pastimes. So we went. We went to Ayodhya in Chitrakoot. I didn't even know what Chitrakoot, I never even heard of it. I just speak about how to get there, what happened. So we went. if, lots of preparation, we went. And then the devotees were saying, can we go to the next place after Shikshaku? So we went. And I started to become familiar with something that I was totally unfamiliar with. And I just came across something from Padma Purana, by the way, just yesterday evening. In Padma Purana, there's a statement, there are 100, this is Padma Purana from thousands of years ago. There are 100 renderings of the story of Ramayana, the story of Ram, that are authorized. That's a lot. That's a lot. Because the story is so wonderful. It's told and told again, with slight variations. And it says in Padma Purana, when you see differences between one version and another version, it's because of different days of Brahma. Right in Padma Purana. The Sanskrit is Kalpa Veda. Kalpa means a day of Brahma, and Veda means different days of Brahma, slight variations. Padma Purana, it's a nice authoritative reference source. So rather than narrating the whole of the Ramayana, because there's different versions, although the main gold standard version everyone accepts is Valmiki Ramayana. This is telling the story with focus on personalities. This personality is Hanuman, such an important person. There's so much more to say, we'll say more later about Hanuman. In one of the classes, we're going to visit Hampi, the place where Hanuman was born, and the place where he had his childhood pastimes and so forth. We'll go for a virtual visit to Hampi. I haven't even been looking at my watch to see what time it is. Oh, there's a clock. Okay, we've only been going for an hour and 15 minutes. Gosh, you're very patient. Especially you two that this is all new to you. Congratulations. Congratulations. And any of you that would like to raise some question or some comment, discuss some points, please identify yourself. We do have a portable microphone, right? Yes?
Just raise your hand if you question.
Hi, Krishna.
It's a tricky microphone.
Thank you so much for speaking on this personality. I appreciated when you were giving us references on how we can apply these lessons to our life. I know you were focusing on Hanuman, but you brought up Mother Sita and you were talking about her disposition when she was requesting something that was not in accordance to what Ram wanted. And it raised a question in my mind because I understand that Mother Sita was transformed. She was assisted by Agni, and that she was, we have that swap that happens that we're so familiar with at the end of the story. The swap happens back.
Yeah.
But there is a point in the story where the swap happens initially, and in my mind, I was questioning whether or not this swap had already occurred, in that you were talking about how this isn't her character. And so I was wondering if you had any understanding of that.
You want to know the details of how the swap happened?
No, not so much the details. I want to know if she had already swapped before she was desiring the golden deer.
Well, I'll start with this. in Valmiki Ramayana, there's no swamp. And the commentators of Valmiki Ramayana don't mention it because there isn't in Valmiki Ramayana. Rather, it's a Leela, and it's Sita that's kidnapped, not a false Sita or swapped Sita. And then that's where their presentation is, that, she was acting in the capacity of a jiva, not Krishna, not a Shakti of Ram, but a jiva that, goes into mind. And then it's rescued by Guru. That's Valmiki Ramayana and the commentators in Valmiki Ramayana. Back to your question. There are different versions of Ramayana that do speak of an exchange. And there's the emphasis is not desire separate from Ram. The emphasis is the wicked Ravana comes to take Sita, and knowing that that's going to happen before he comes to take Sita, Agni comes to make the switch. And there's varieties of how that switch takes place. I don't know all of them, but there's varieties of how that switch takes place. So it's a false Sita. Now, here's a detail that I like. Although it's not in Valmiki Ramayana, Ram confirmed that there was a switch. Because he says to the Brahmana in South India, no. See, it's not possible for a wicked person, Ravana, demon, to even come close to Sita's shadow, just because touch Sita. Not possible. I assure you, real Sita was not taken. I assure you, to the Brahmana's comfort. Then he goes to South India, he finds Kurma Brahman, Kurma Purana, and in Kurma Purana it says the false Sita, which isn't the only place that it speaks like that. Then he brings a copy back to pacify the heart of the Brahmana. See, it's confirmed in scripture. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted, but it's not in Valmiki Ramayana. That's a detail. I think it's interesting. So Lord Chaitanya is then confirming multiple Ramayanas, as Pandra Purana confirms multiple Ramayanas. And they're authorized. Go back to your question, was it before she's had the desire separate from Ram? Yes, because shortly after, the desire to having Ram go get the ear is she's kidnapped. And she's not kidnapped when she's with Lakshman and Ram gone, it's before. So when precisely, I don't know, but it was before that separate desire. There's a switch.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
While you're asking your question, you can drop your hands so I can hear you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for your lecture. I have a question regarding the spiritual master relationship between Hanuman and Sugriv when he was in his own zone between when Rama helped Sugriva the Bali. So you mentioned there's a spiritual master relationship there, and Ram gave Hanuman his ring as a way to represent that. But Hanuman was a servant in that moment, right? When he went to go find Sita, he wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
So
The Guru was a servant of the Lord. The Lord empowers the servant to do the service. He was in the mood of servant, and he was empowered to do the service directly. After Ram examined him, he empowered him. Yes, he was in the mood of service.
So that ring was given.
It's a gesture.
Okay.
A symbolic gesture. Symbolizing, I hereby empower you. And this is from the perspective, it's not that there's only one perspective. It's from the perspective, a common perspective of Sri Vaishnava commentators. And there's others that have another realization, another perspective. That's a shared perspective. Common.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for beautifully elucidating this several series of pastimes of Hanuman and especially the pastime of how Hanuman deals with Sugriva while he is fighting Vali. I guess my question is is maybe nuanced. Hanuman's authority is Sugriva.
Yes.
His Lord, the Lord of his life is Lord Ram.
Yes.
And we can clearly see Sugriva is not a self-realized Paramahamsa. He has his weaknesses. But Hanuman's authority is Sugriva in one sense.
That's right.
So what principle is Hanuman following in serving an authority who is not fully realized while pleasing his Lord?
I don't see a problem at all. Do spiritual masters ever assist disciples connecting with Krishna when that disciple, who he's the guru of, has sensual weakness? The goal is to connect with Krishna, or in this case with Ram. That's the goal. So Sugriva does have a good heart. The way that I described this the other day is he floundered on the sensual platform, but not on the heart platform. He's actually a friend, and he's in Satya Rasa with Ram, but he floundered a bit on the sensual plane. It didn't take much to get him back because his heart was in the right orientation. And Hanuman played that role.
I guess my confusion is Sugriva did not always have this desire to fulfill the Lord's plan.
Oh, it was always there. It just got covered over by his sensual weakness.
But Hanuman wanted to serve the Lord, so he
Why
had to
not?
balance.
But to serve the Lord includes bringing Sugriva to his senses. Playing the guru function on behalf of Ram, to bring Sugriva to Ram, to restore that forgotten relationship, covered relationship. Yeah, you see a problem, I don't see a problem. And that's where we're having a little difficulty in our exchange. Sugriva he's the king, and the minister is below the king. But on the other hand, he's guru, so he's helping Sugriva in the mood of service to Ram. He's helping Sugriva act in accord with where his heart is instead of where his senses are. It's a guru function. I don't think we need to go further. We just meditate on it. Anything else? We know one another. I know how we grow, especially like 60s, lives to this, something like or something. Something in the back?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the wonderful class.
Did you like the pictures?
Yeah. They're from everywhere, so it's just captivating.
Visuals are nice.
From like Manish Prabhu's question, what I understood, what I kind of took out of it was like Hanuman would be like, I don't know, like be employed at like Microsoft and he would be under a boss or something. But then he would also have like a spiritual master, which is Rama.
Microsoft, how Microsoft here?
Right, you know, that's an example. Like, is that what you kind of mean?
I don't understand your question. Can you help me with understanding your question? You're clear what the question is?
Yeah, so,
Somebody else is clear, I'm not. So do it again.
okay, no, when you were replying to the Means Peru's question,
Yeah,
yeah, and you said you didn't agree with them. And when you were trying to explain it, and this is what I understood from the explanation, but I wanted to know if that's what you meant or not. Should I? Do you get it?
help me. I don't understand the question.
Okay, so,
Say it differently, say it differently.
okay. You know how you said, Hanuman, you were okay, like you don't see a problem in Hanuman serving
Yes, I
Surya?
remember saying that.
Yeah.
The function, Hanuman's mode is a mode of service. He's serving Sugriva, who in one sense is his superior, he's the king, and he's the minister of the king. But he's serving as guru to Sugriva in his service to Ram by helping Sugriva remember what he's forgotten because he got centrally bewildered. And so I don't see a problem with a guru, in this case Hanuman, helping someone who's forgotten his heart's orientation towards Ram because of sensual weakness to get on the other side of that sensual weakness and restore his relationship with Ram. That's a guru function. In service to Ram.
Yes, that makes sense, actually.
Okay.
I guess like that's what I meant when I was comparing it to Microsoft, when I said, like, as like a disciple, you like work at like some outside source as like a servant, I guess, because you're employed somewhere. But then you also have your like guru.
Okay. That's a bit of a stretch, but I think I get it. Okay. Okay. Are we done? Something behind?
Hey, Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the lecture. So my question is, why did Lord Ram decide to wait for just 4 months during the rainy season? Every minute he's feeling this intense separation, and he said they had to wait for 4 months for
We
the.
didn't say have to.
Okay.
It's part of tradition, particularly for sadhus. They don't travel during the rainy season, it's just tradition. Now, is it possible to travel during, many people travel during the rainy season. But, tradition is sadhus would stay in one place. Now, he has reason to not stay, let's go find Sita. But it was decided, your question is, why was it decided? It was just tradition. And there may be other reasons, he maybe was allowing Sugriva to now get some reprieve from that. One of the traits of Sugriva is he's really skitterish. Like he's traumatized by everything that happened between him and Bali. So that, it happens again, it happens later too. He's still like traumatized. He's like not trusting. So it's part of his nature, and now let him settle in on, okay, you're back with your wife and you're back with the kingdom, and your whole psyche gets a little oriented again. Maybe that was a factor. along with tradition, you just don't travel on the rainy season. You don't ask subordinates to travel when it's, because South India can be really active. You see?
Yeah, I'm from South India.
Oh, okay, so it can be really heavy. Not always, but it can be really heavy. So those are two possible reasons. Maybe a third possible reason is it's fit to leave us. Because Sita's gone, Sita's given 1 year to submit to Ravan. Right? And so, that 4 months is part of 1 year. Then another 30 days is searching. Then another is Hanuman's leave, and then the rest of the whole story.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my very humble obeisances. And thank you so much for that very wonderful insight. I don't have a question as such, but I just thought of sharing a nice point that came across in regards to the Ramayana discussion that we are having. Happy to hear this point from your very holy godbrother Sripad Ayendra Prabhu. And so Prabhuji was mentioning that when Ravana came to kidnap Mother Sita, she went behind the veil of Yogamaya, and Ravana had this nature of exploiting, because of which a mic representation was presented in front of him. And he very beautifully drew parallels with Harinam and said that similarly those who are in the mood of Ravana want to exploit Harinam, they can never access the pure Sita like Shuddhanam. They can never access that pure name, but they are just presented representation, because the mood is that of exploiting Harinam for bhakti and it's not for prema. So that's just one point that came across in connection with this discussion of Harinam. So just wanted to share. Hare Krishna.
Okay, I think we're done. So let's wrap it up.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, thank you all for attending. Let's appreciate association with His Holy Srila Swami with a loud Hari Bol. So as you know, Maharaj is here for 2 weeks. And because of the nature of COVID, not everybody can be at everybody's home all the time. Don't take it personally, just go to Maharaj's YouTube channel, which was sent out in the email. And you can listen